How would you like to work? 9 to 5, Monday to Thursday. Well, exactly 1 year ago, Rich Leigh emailed his employees at his PR firm in the west of England to tell them that would be their new working week for the same pay. Since then, he's reported better productivity and fewer sick days. And he's not the only one. Similar trials in New Zealand and Scandinavia, for example, have delivered equally positive results. But it hasn't worked everywhere, and it's not clear whether reduced working hours are feasible across all industries or in developing countries. So, is a 4-day working week all it's cracked up to be? Before I introduce our expert panel and some of your thoughts, let's take a look at what some of Rich's employees told the BBC last week.
The usual reaction I get when I tell people I work 4 days, they're like, "Oh my God, you're so lucky." To which I just say, well, yeah. Boing! I've always wanted a dog, but I was always really conscious. I didn't want a dog to be left at home, sort of hours on end, day after day.
I feel like I've got more to motivate me, and on the Friday it's really nice because I can do things that I couldn't do before because I didn't have the time. I now can create bonds with different people, just like make cups of tea and make some toast for an elderly person with dementia.
The best thing about working 4 days for me is that it's given me the opportunity to do my degree as well. I don't think I could go back to working 5 days, to be honest, so yeah, I guess I'm here for the long run.
Well, joining me now is Rich Leigh, who brought in that 4-day week a year ago at his PR firm. Joining him is Almuth McDowall, Professor of Organisational Psychology at Birbeck University in London, and Phil James, who is Chief Executive of the Institute for Leadership and Management. Welcome all to our Impact Minds debate. Rich, first we want to know, has it really helped the bottom line? Has this helped your business?
It certainly hasn't hindered it. I think that was one of the things that people were concerned about, or certainly fed back to me, was you might be able to maintain your business, you certainly can't grow one, reducing the working week. We've just released some figures now, been doing it for a year, and earnings are up 70%. Our net margin, which was 50%, is now 51, 52, just under. So we managed to maintain a stable net margin too. Sick days, you touched on, have halved. I mean, they were 1.3 per person per year. Now it's 0.5. So they weren't high anyway. But and the most important thing for me is that I sent an anonymous survey to the team, and every single person said they felt that they had the better work-life balance as a result.
So what's been the biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge, at first, picking up the courage, or drawing the courage to tell clients. Initially, because we work with 15, 20 different clients,
and they all want to feel as if your workers are stretched, don't they? And working as
weirdly,
hard as they
PR is one of those
can.
industries where you're constantly being judged every week, every month. So they're just like, do more. But the way that works is clients pay us for a certain amount of time per month, and then we just allocate that time, from a time management perspective. So that's kind of what's had to change, is just us get a bit tighter from this has to happen then. And it's just worked really well.
Okay, that's a good news story. Almuth, I know you've looked at some of the other surveys that have been done in different countries. Any lessons you can draw?
So lessons that we can draw is, the question we ought to be asking really is, how can we make work a better place? In some contexts that might be working a 4-day week. In other contexts it might be looking at the very, very many hours we spend behind our desk. In other organizations it might be about working much more flexibly, broadly. So what actually suits people's needs and what suits a business needs? Those are the questions to ask.
Have you seen any other examples of 4 days work for 5 days pay?
No, I haven't, no, but there are plenty of other examples of more flexible or reduced working hours. So for instance, the quite famous now control trial that they did in Gothenburg in Sweden, where they reduced nurses' working days to 6 days instead of 8. And they were 85% more likely to engage with their patients. Patient satisfaction, care satisfaction went up. Their life satisfaction, work-life balance was in a better place. But then sadly the council ran out of money.
Well, there is that. And Phil, when you heard about Rich's experiment, which is a year in, what struck you?
Well, it's a really joyful story, I think. I think Rich and his whole team have set an example of what can be achieved when we think outside the box. As employers, as leaders and managers in organisations, there are things at our disposal that we can do to make work more not only bearable but joyful and meaningful.
So should we all be doing this?
Well, that's where I would sound a note of caution, I think. So where this experiment, I'm sorry, Rich, it's probably more than an experiment, where this success story has worked in Rich's company, I can't actually see it working elsewhere. If you consider some of the different industries where a 4-day working week might be more problematic, think about healthcare, think about the self-employed, the gig economy, where shorter working hours, shorter availability of work leads directly to less pay, then I think, a direct lift and shift of a 4-day working week could be problematic. So
I'll bring in a few thoughts from our viewers, because I tweeted about this earlier in the day, and you can still tweet me at Philippa BBC, but many of you have been responding with your thoughts and comments. So, for example, Ergo in Florida said this: having worked a 4-day week for 5 years, she said, I can personally say with confidence that this makes you hate your job less, and I rarely call in sick. That's Richard's point. Steve in Philadelphia says, I work a 4-day week during the summer, and it really makes a huge difference mentally. We work a longer shift Monday to Thursday to make up for it, but it is worth having the extra day. But some other notes of caution, one, for example, from Lao Bay in Malaysia saying, look, developing countries will continue a 5 to 6 day week, and there are more later, but I just want to bring this back to you, Rich, because is this a very privileged debate that we're having here?
I think so. I mean, in many ways it is. We're I can only speak for myself as a business owner and our agency. We're in a relatively high margin industry where I can afford to lose, and also we're a Gloucester-based, as you said, West of England based. So we're outside of London, but we charge what everybody charges, and rightfully so. So with Gloucester overheads, so we are in a fortunate position, and I get asked often, should everybody do this? Because Corbyn, of course, came out, Francis O'Grady,
the Labour Party is thinking about putting in its manifesto here in the UK the idea of a 4-day working week.
Which, as was touched on, a sweeping generalisation. Yes, this is what we should do, isn't necessarily the right answer to a question that is being asked day in, day out about ill work and mental health, and being overworked and being underpaid and things like that.
So what is the best way to phrase this question then, do you think?
How can we make work a better place? How can we make it more meaningful? And how can we consider work-life balance as part of a working life? Because let's face it, we all have a life outside work. And there's so much to be gained from recognizing that the evidence is there. If you help people facilitate work-life balance, they're more productive, they're more engaged, they have better relationships at work, they report better health. So it's a win-win situation.
So I know you've referred to the sweet spot, and there is that issue, isn't there? As if you have healthier, more fulfilled employees, helps the bottom line.
Absolutely. I think it's a well-argued case. Where the struggle comes in is exactly how to do it, how to implement this in different organisations. Rich has found a way, which is fantastic for your company, Rich. Elsewhere, I think implementing a 4-day working week sounds to me just as rigid as having a 5-day working week with a 2-day weekend. I agree with Almuth, which is where if we can find ways of giving people more control, more discretion over their working patterns, that's where I think we can help people find some more meaning.
There may be, in fact, there are some people who've tweeted me and said, I don't want to be told to work a 4-day week. For some people, your work is your passion, or you simply can't. You can't achieve what you mean to do, can you?
Yeah, and I think one thing that it constantly comes back to is 100 years ago we were working 6 days a week, and technology has got us to the stage now where 6 days, then 5 days. For us, given the industry we work in, the Fridays are not entirely redundant, but it used to be quite a reporting heavy day where we'd say, hey clients, this is what we've done for you this week, and these are the results thereof. But just before I got into PR, people were still cutting newspaper clippings out and sticking them and saying, here's what we've done. When I came into it, it was a case of having to then screen grab it and do that. It takes time. Now there's software that makes that easier. There are analytics tools that makes that easier.
So you're making the most of the way that tech has changed.
So everybody talks about technology and it kind of improving our lives. We don't see that. Across the board in life, you don't see that. You see people as we touched on briefly just before, midnight, you're still on your, doing your work emails, that kind of thing. I'm just trying to use what we've got in front of us to make, to kind of free up some space. So you said, is it a privileged position? From an industry perspective, certainly.
It's also about the morality of management, isn't it? Because of course tech, and I know you've touched on this from an organisational psychology point of view, I can feel there'll be viewers who'll be shouting at the screen, yeah, but I'm always expected to be there, whether I'm sitting in my seat or not.
Yes, and I think that is something that we need to grapple with much, much better than we do. Our own research is showing that actually over 50% organisations don't feel prepared for how our work is changing and becoming much more digital, because that brings new challenges with it. You know, if your team is dispersed and you're not actually in one office, how do you pick up if one of your employees is struggling?
Should we all be working a 4-day week? Maybe my question's out of date. What do you think? Is that not the biggest challenge now?
It's a huge challenge, isn't it? I think the societal trend is that we're all feeling under constant pressure to be always on, 24/7 available. Guilty as charged. I'm somebody that checks emails on holiday and that sort of thing, through fear of missing out, which is something that we experience through our social lives as well as our work lives. So I think what we're talking about actually is part of a broader societal pattern that we have to grapple with, which is why I think it's problematic to have, as Rich has indicated, actually sweeping policies like a 4-day working week, which seem to jar against the general direction of what we're experiencing
So
in
I don't
society.
feel any of you saying we should be putting that in a manifesto. None of you thinking, well, we should mandate a 4-day week.
Where's the evidence? Where's
Okay.
the evidence
Where's
that
the
it's good
evidence
for everybody?
Let me
Exactly.
just bring in a few more thoughts. This is all anecdotal, of course, but a lot of people are tweeting about this. Here's a few more. Wick's telling me about the 4-day week. Of course not. There should be choice and flexibility, both for the employee and the employer. A broad brush, one-size-fits-all approach is a simplistic nonsense. How about a 4-day week? Well, Eudistra said to me simply, if you want to sell your country to China, then yeah. And Diver Down says the world is plunging towards services and low-quality jobs with decreasing salaries and debt rocketing. Add automation, AI, information technology, massive job loss is a sure bet. Will we even have a 1-day job left? Well, there is a thought about, you know, what else we should be thinking about, because it might be that we need to work less because there are fewer jobs for human beings. Any thoughts?
I think that's certainly a fear, isn't it? But I think therein lie some opportunities to tackle some of the issues we've been talking about. How can we make work more fulfilling? How can we create good work for people to do and create further opportunities for those that aren't able to engage in conventional patterns of working to do so through the clever use of technology? I think those opportunities are there if we want to apply the sort of creativity that Rich has shown in his company, but in different ways. You know, to really embrace the technology and really be creative about how we can organise ourselves differently in the modern world.
I think it's just taking it and making it work for you as individual employers, and that's all we can do. So for us, we have call forwards on, we have voicemails to email, we have WhatsApp groups for every single client. So like it's nice and transparent and quick and does away with the formality of email, and then, like I say, the reporting tools and things like that. It's less panicking, oh my God, I've got to be on all the time, and thinking, okay, let's make this work for us. And from you mentioned earlier on one of the kind of points at which like, I guess stress points for me as an owner is we had to make a promise to clients that if they needed us, we're there, because PR is a 24/7, the media is a 24/7 beast. And for us, it's if something happens at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, we've always been there for clients. They pick up the phone, they say, hey, this has happened, can you help?
So if there is to be, in companies where a 4-day week is a possibility and where it's going to be made to work, Almuth, it is about the quality of management, really, isn't it, as well? A certain kind of vigilance to the needs of the people you're supplying.
And trained leaders. There is no app for leadership, is there? People need people, and in order to make good flexible work happen, you got to train your line managers and your leaders.
And we're
Absolutely.
so far from the days of just the factory floor, or of
Exactly.
knowing what's expected of leaders and chief executives now, aren't we? That you need more flexibility.
Yes.
Yeah, but in some ways I think we're still stuck in those days of thinking of work and the way that work is carried out in terms, in terms of the way we organised ourselves in the factories in the Industrial Revolution, that we can plan and be sure about what's going to happen. Whereas the sort of world that Rich has painted and Almuth is painting is one that's much more volatile, much more complex, much more global, let's face it, where technology can help. But I think that has to be accompanied by a different way of thinking about work, how we organise ourselves, and therefore the role of managers and leaders in the workplace. Because I think it's different to where all this started, 100 years ago.
So my question for our debate was, should we all be working a 4-day week? And very briefly, what was our answer?
Not everybody.
Not everybody.
It's honestly the only answer, the best answer I've got is business by business case. If you know your margins.
Business by business.
Yeah.
It depends. Look at the evidence.
Yeah.
yeah, if the cap fits, wear it, but don't lose sight of other creative ways of organising ourselves that are already in front of us.
All right, Phil, Almuth, Rich, I put you on the spot at the end, but thank you very much. Keep your ideas coming in. Thanks very much for sending in your messages to Impact too. Bye for now.